Good afternoon, all of you. I'm here going to introduce the third module in which we will be discussing various topics, including the types of bill, the structure of bill, in which we will have a lot of further discussion with respect to preamble, head note, margin note, sections, illustrations, explanations, and so on and so forth. And then we will move further to give little bit detail on all these issues. But before we move on that, it is better if we can discuss something regarding the types of bill, because there are many types of bill which are on and often introduced on the floor of the house, whether it's parliament or the state assemblies. And uh, while understanding the whole concept of legislation, it would be better if we can if we can really understand the differences, the typology of all these kind of bills. So with that, we introduce this topic, the types of bill. It deals with module 3, type topic 1. Now, under this types of bill, we can have two type of categories. The one is called as content-wise category, and the another category is which I will discuss a little later. That's called as procedure-wise. Because on the basis of content, bills can be categorized. On the basis of procedure for introducing the bill on the floor of the house, the bill can be categorized. So first, let's take the content-wise categorization. If you see the content-wise categorization, you will find original bill, which embody new principles, ideas, and policy; amending bill, which basically amend certain existing laws; consolidating bills, which consolidate various laws; expiring laws, continuation bill; repealing and amending bill; validating act; bills to replace ordinance; money and financial bills; and constitution amendment bills. I just need to remind you that this is not validating act. Validating act is basically validating bill here, because we are all discussing bill, so it's better to have a same nomenclature throughout. On the basis of procedure, if you wish to categorize, then there are ordinary bill, which is we can further categorize into government bill and private member bill. Then money bill, which is always a government bill, obviously not by a private member, and finance bill. Ordinance replacing bill, which is again by the government only, and the constitution amendment bill. So these are the bill, because they have their own different procedure, which I will discuss in later lectures. Now, if we further move into this original bills one by one on the basis of categorization of bill on the basis of content. So first category, as I mentioned earlier, the original bill. What do we mean by original bill? It's nothing but basically those bill, whether private member bill or by the government. These bills are those which deal with new law, new policy, something which is going to be introduced as a matter of legislative policy on the floor of the house. And if you wish to know what are the new original bills were introduced, so you can see illustration on Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs. If you go to the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs website, I have just given a link here, mpa.gov.in. If you go on this side, you will find out a lot of bills which are pending on the floor of the house. So there you will find out the Rashtriya Raksha University Bill 2020. It's a new university going to be established. As I told you, since new, so original bill is going to be there. The Pesticide Management Bill, again a new bill has been introduced with respect to regulating the use and use of pesticide. So that's where you will find Pesticide Management Bill 2020. Major Port Authorities Bill 2020. Here in this bill, the Government of India has a proposed a regulatory body and regulatory mechanism for all major ports across the country. So around 7 or 8 we have major ports. So to regulate them, we are going to establish authority. So that's Major Port Authority Bill, which is there, again original bill. Then Anti-Maritime Piracy Bill 2019. That's original bill, but later on this bill I will discuss especially with respect to the validation bill as such. So just keep in mind that's original bill, and that's where I wish to make a very clear statement that all original bills are not necessarily ordinary bill. There may be something coming into the other category as well. I mean, a good example, anti-maritime piracy bill is an original bill but also a validation bill. Later on, we will clarify it further. Let's take another category of bill on the basis of content. Amending bill. What's amending bill? Amending bill are those bill which are introduced on the floor of the house, which government or the private, obviously the government proposes the amending bill. These bills are basically deals with existing laws if they require any amendment. So you have, you know, already PCP and DT Act, Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, you have already that act. Now you want to extend the period in which the mother can go for abortion. A woman can go for abortion on certain condition. Earlier it was 16 weeks, now it has been extended to 22nd weeks and so on and so forth. So uh, there is certain law in existence. You want to change the law with respect to certain rules, regulations thereunder. So rather than replacing entire act, what you are going to do, you are just bringing a bill to amend certain provision thereof, and that's why they are called as amending bills. They are not original bill, because in original bill you have to bring altogether a new law. You have to bring altogether a new legislation, whereas in amending bills, the legislation is already in existence. You want to change certain things inside that. If you take a bare act of, say, CRPC, IPC, or Contract Act, you will find that a lot of amendments are inserted from time to time. Now these amendments are inserted through amending bills, and the most interesting feature of amending bill is they always have this word amendment in the very nomenclature itself. So I have just quoted here the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Bill, Amendment Bill 2020, the Companies Amendment Bill 2020. You all know Companies Act 2013 is already there. So you want to make certain amendment in the Companies Act, so you are making it Companies Amendment Bill 2020. In fact, when it's going to be an act, it will be called as the Companies Amendment Act 2020. That's a very interesting feature. Then Banking Regulation Amendment Bill 2020, the Right to Information Amendment Bill 2019, the Motor Vehicle Amendment Bill 2019. I mean, this most talked about bill. Now this has been passed, in fact, is now approved one. So here a lot of fines have been enhanced if you violate certain rules under the Motor Vehicle Act 1980. I think check it, 1982 or 86. So that's how amending bills are there. So I recap it. Amending bills are those bills which are brought by the government for the purpose of making amendment in any existing legislation. Means there should be, for the purpose of bringing amending bill, what is important that there should be some act already dealing with that area. If there is no act on that, you have to bring ordinary bill. If the act is already in existence and you just want to change certain things inside that act, you have to bring the amending bills. I hope it is clear to all of you. Let's take another example of content-wise bill, that is called as consolidating bills. What is consolidating bills? Students, you must have come across there are certain subjects which are covered by many legislations. So what usually government do, they consolidate all the provisions scattered across various numerous legislations into one. This is one way when the government bring consolidation bill. Consolidation by its nomenclature is very interesting. Consolidation, you consolidate. Consolidate means you are basically bringing together lot many scattered provisions dealing with similar subjects in altogether different legislations, or maybe it's something different. There are certain subjects which can be clubbed together even if there is no legislation already on them. So a consolidation bill is also sometime original bill, not necessarily amending bill. Consolidation bill can also be original. Your IPC is whenever it must have been introduced on the floor of the house, it must have been an original bill. But these days we have a lot of bills which are there on the floor of the house. Dealing with consolidation is basically is about those subjects which are scattered in many. So, it's example. If you go by wages, what should be the minimum wages, what should be the factory wages, what should be the wages for the daily workers, what should be the wages for the regular workers, but in organized sectors, in unorganized sectors, and so on and so forth. So to deal with the wages, the government brought one consolidation bill on the floor of the house, and that is called the Code on Wages 2019. You just refer it. The bill is available on the MPA, the website, which I have just given the link in the earlier PPT. That code you can read, the bill you can read. That bill itself says the bill to consolidate the law on wages. Similarly, code on social security. So we are consolidating law on social security. You will find out the various social security schemes are scattered in Senior Citizen Act, in CRPC, in family laws, in maintenance related rules, and so on and so forth. So for the purpose of social security, even Manrega is there. A lot of prime minister's schemes are there. So the government want to bring all those schemes together, all those rules together, and make a proper code thereof, and that's why it is called as the Code on Social Security. It would be little haste to say that all these consolidating bills have the expression code. Some of them may not, but most of these bills start with a nomenclature, the code on. So you can say the code on penal laws, the Indian Penal Code, the code on civil procedure, code on criminal procedure, code on social security, and now code on wages. So this is a very interesting hint that what kind of bill it is. If code word is there, you can always understand it's basically going to consolidate. Now another interesting bill which is often on and often introduced on the floor of the house is expiring bill, expiring laws. What is that? Expiring laws. I hope you know about a particular type of law which is often on and often passed by the parliament, but have a limited time period. I mean, these laws are going to be enforced for a limited time period. They can pass it. I mean, Parliament can pass law which can have unlimited time period. It can continue until and unless it is repealed by the Parliament or declared unconstitutional by the court, or it can pass a law which will itself expire on its scheduled date. So they can pass, say, Parliament can pass a law and say, look it, this regulation is going to be enforced from now onwards, but not beyond 10th year or 20th year from the passing of this, from the coming into execution of this particular law. So if this is so, then such type of laws are going to expire on that given day. I hope you understand it. Government of India has enacted a reservation related rule in 1950, then say that these rules will expire on after 10 years, that is in 1960. But because of some reasons, socio-economic and political, these reservation rules were further extended. So from 1960 to further 70, 80, whatever. Now, not only reservation, you will find many other rules with respect to the fine, with respect to the many other. So whenever such legislation is there, which the government think that though they are going to expire, but they need to be continued, then in that case they have no other option but to bring a bill by which the given legislation will continue for another 10 year, another 20 year, another 30 year, as the government wish to do, as the Parliament is going to approve or the State Assembly going to approve. So this type of bill, these type of bills are called as expiring laws continuation bill. A good example of this is the Constitution 126th Amendment Bill 2019. You all know that in the Lok Sabha and in the Lok Sabha there are reservation for certain reservation for the members of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Initially, it was there for 10 years and further it was extended. In 2019, it was going to expire, in fact. So the government introduced the bill, that Constitution 126th Amendment Bill 2019, to extend the reservation in Lok Sabha and assemblies to the people belonging to scheduled caste and scheduled tribe for another 10 years. Now look at, there is no norm, there is no new rule, there is no new policy is created by this bill. This bill is merely introduced to extend the continuation of a bill of an earlier existing law which was going to expire on certain date. So that's how this is known as continuation of existing law. So for that they bring a particular bill. Now, another type of such bill is repealing and amending laws. They are very interesting. Repealing and amending laws, amending bills. These bills are introduced to clean the statute book by amending and repealing old statutes which are either redundant or declared unconstitutional by court. Please understand a concept. I think this part I have already dealt in BBA lecture, I remember. I told all of you that though the Indian Supreme Court can declare any statute as unconstitutional, but merely declaring such statute unconstitutional doesn't mean that the statute will be no longer in the statute book. That will remain in the statute book unless and until the same is cleaned by the Parliament itself, because that is something, a kind of separation of power we follow. You have power to declare it unconstitutional, but you don't have the power to erase it from the statute book. If you want to erase it from the statute book, that only can be done by the Parliament. So this job is done by Parliament by bringing repealing and amending act. I mean repealing and amending bill. So we have recently the repealing and amending bill 2019. Look at here. There is no further name is given. The name is itself repealing and amending bill 2019. I repeat. The name is itself repealing and amending bill 2019, and if you read the bill, it talks about 58 old central laws which are repealed thereby. So once this bill is going to be approved by floor of the House and assent of President is given, all those 58 bill will be automatically in one go, they will be repealed from the statute book. I hope many of you might have a question here. That why not government bring each and every bill again and again to repeal them, amend them as per the amending rules. Probably this type of procedure saved the time of the Parliament. It's a kind of kangaroo leap in which in one go you amend say 100, 200, 300, there's no number, infinite number. You can just put the name in the schedule of that bill, that these are the bill which these are the act which are already in existence, which are redundant, which are either declared unconstitutional. We want them no more in our statute book, and accordingly they may be repealed. So you can do it by just bringing the repealing and amending bill as it is there in case of repealing and amending bill 2000. Now validating bill. Remember I was discussing about the piracy bill 2019. What is validating bill? You all know that the government of India can enter into treaties with foreign countries, with international organizations. It can also execute under its executive power certain things over which in later point of time they are supposed to bring law. To do that, we have a different type of bill that is called as a validating bill. One example is Anti-Maritime Piracy Bill 2019. And if you see, I have specifically quoted the preamble of this bill just to explain you the meaning of validating bill. Whereas India is a party to the United Nations Convention on Law of Sea adopted by United Nations on 10th December 1982 and has ratified the same on 26th June 1995. And whereas the aforesaid convention, among other things, state that all states cooperate to fullest possible extent in the repression of piracy on high seas, and other places outside the jurisdiction of any state, and whereas it is considered necessary to implement the provision relating to the piracy contained in the aforesaid convention, this bill is this law is enacted by the parliament. If you read the further part of the preamble, this is clearly, categorically suggesting to all of us that this bill is brought not because you wish to do something only, because you have already ratified an international convention and that need to be placed through legal provision. So ratification is an executive job. President of India, or in the name of President of India, the Prime Minister or the Minister can enter into national or international treaties. When they are entering into international treaties that need to be ratified, that need to be once ratified, need to be executed. But for the purpose of execution, you need law. So here the law is brought just to enforce an international treaty already signed by our Honorable President or Honorable Prime Minister of India. So because of this reason, these bills are called validating. Validating, it's a very interesting word. Validate. An act is already done in anticipation of a legislation. So here is the legislation. So what you did earlier, I mean, you remember, you must have been in your schools those days when Prime Minister, Prime Minister, the then Honorable Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh entered into an agreement with respect to the uranium and other nuclear related material transfer with the United States. And I saw the debate on the floor of the House where a bill was introduced, that is nuclear energy bill was introduced just to ratify the agreement between India and US. So that's how many a time whenever you enter into an agreement with any other country, you are supposed to validate that, you are supposed to verify that, ratify that on the floor of the House, and that is done through the validation bill, which is something like that, the anti-maritime piracy bill. Now, I resume it a little bit, pause was there. There is another category of bill that is known as bill to replace ordinance. You all know that the governor and the President of India has ordinance making power. So if the parliament is not in session, they can pass an ordinance. So the rule goes like something: if at any time, except when both houses of the parliament are not in session, the president is satisfied that circumstances exist which render it necessary for him to take immediate action, he may promulgate such ordinance as the circumstances appears to him to require. An ordinance so promulgated by President or the Governor, as the case may be, has the same force and effect as of Act of Parliament. But every such ordinance has to be laid before both of the houses of the Parliament or the Assembly, as the case may be, and it ceases to operate at expiry of 6 weeks from the reassembly of Parliament or the Assembly, if before the expiration of that period resolution disapproving it are passed by both the houses, then upon passing of second of those resolution, it will be deemed to be expired. It can also be withdrawn at any time by the president. So such kind of ordinance can be withdrawn. The president may issue an ordinance to enforce the provisions of the bill introduced in and pending before the House or committee, or to enforce provision of bill already passed by one House but not yet by another House. The president can go for an ordinance. So for the purpose of ordinance, it is not necessary that both houses should not be in session. Even if one house is in session and that house is not passing any legislation and all that, or just holding it, the president can go for ordinance. If the government want to continue the provision of the ordinance for a longer period or to make it permanent, a bill to replace it is brought forward. Whenever a bill seeking to replace an ordinance or without modification is introduced in the House, a statement explaining the circumstances which had necessitated legislation by ordinance is required to be placed before the House along with the bill. Now, student, please understand this point especially. If you want to bring an ordinary legislation, you are not supposed to provide any justification as to why you want to bring the bill. The cabinet note is there, the approval is there, you just place it on the floor of the house. The floor can approve it or disapprove it. But you are not supposed to bring a kind of justification. But in case of ordinance, why the ordinance was brought, what was the emergency, what was the reason behind bringing that particular type of ordinance, that must be put on the floor of the house as a part of explaining the circumstances. So a statement explaining circumstances is necessary. So you can distinguish an ordinary bill need not to have such a statement, but in case of ordinance, the justification for ordinance must be there. Generally, a statutory resolution disapproving an ordinance and related government bill are discussed together. If the resolution is adopted, it would mean disapproval of ordinance and bill would be automatically fall through. If resolution is negative, the motion for consideration of bill is then put to the vote and further stages of bill are proceeded with. And in case you wish to see the recent ordinance in this regard, you can find out the prohibition of electronic cigarette production, manufacture, import, export, transport, sale, distribution, storage, and amendment bill 2019. I mean, you can criticize the very nomenclature, too big, too large, as such. In next lecture, we will discuss two more bill, content wise as well as procedure wise, that is money and finance bill, and then constitution amendment bill, because they have an altogether different procedure. So with this, I finish today's lecture. Thank you. Stay safe, stay healthy.